I
Yeah.
think the cool thing about watching your content is that when you, at least from a viewer's perspective, we can see that you're pulling from different backgrounds and ideas, whether it's the influence you're talking about from Romania or Italy. So to get a little bit more into reading culture in these different places, what books were big? Because at least when like from American culture, like the books that were in our schooling was Great Gatsby, Frankenstein, To Kill a
Mm.
Mockingbird, Catcher in the Rye. What were some of those books that were ingrained into the culture there?
Yeah, I guess in Romania, I didn't really get that far along into the like literary education. In fact, my sister, I have an older sister who finished high school in Romania, and she's like, "You are the most educated, undereducated Romanian person ever." Because the foundational novels, I have not read many of them. I'm currently reading Moara cu noroc. The translation would be the lucky mill or the mill of good luck, which is this like 19th century novella based in some village where this young couple take over like a local inn. And they become innkeepers, but then there's a whole mafia in the area, so they're like struggling against the sort of organized crime and oppression of that region, which is very interesting. But it kind of reminds me in a way, of the sort of the Italian novel that you read in high school as an Italian student, which is I Promessi Sposi, translation The Betrothed, which is about these two young people who really want to get married. They're in love, they want to get married, but then this local Don falls in love with this girl, or in love, like he wants her because she's gorgeous, right? And she won't have him. So the next best thing is to just make it impossible for them to get married. So, and it's like a, you know, however many 100 pages book about their trials and tribulations. So it's interesting how there are these commonalities across European cultures and beyond Europe. Of course, there's a huge history of colonization and European countries taking their own genres and narrative motifs and themes and stuff elsewhere, and then people in those countries starting to sort of trying to imitate European writing just so that they can get recognized. Um, so yeah, it's interesting to like read across cultures and be like, so these people who have never spoken, that had never been to each other's countries, were thinking more or less about similar things around
Yeah.
the same time. It really like shows you what zeitgeist is and why, sometimes you like find yourself having a thought and then somebody says it 2 days later online and you're like, oh my God, how did they, are our phones listening to us? And chances are that they are, but also chances are that we're all experiencing a cultural moment and responding to it in similar ways because we're all human, right?
Yeah, I
But it
agree.
seems
Yeah, go ahead.
another thing that I thought about when you're asking me this, like the foundational books, it is funny that you should ask that because I often will speak to people about reading and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, have you read such and such? Have you read?" For example, I have not read Paradise Lost. Okay, don't shoot me. And they're like, "What? You haven't read Paradise Lost?" I'm like, "Okay, calm down. I wasn't here when you guys were studying that in school. It's not everybody's greatest work of art, okay? Different countries have their own people. Shocking, I know, but it's not all about UK and US writing."
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And even when you're talking, we say it a lot on our podcast on the founders one specifically, but what's most personal is most general. And I think when we talk about
Mm.
human lifestyle, although we may be from different parts of the world, we still sometimes go through similar struggles. Where it's even if it's
Yeah.
personal, whether it's cultural, whether, as you said, when it comes to xenophobia or anything, there's these things that tend to be constants wherever you kind of move. So there are those moments of real humanity that we get to connect over. And speaking of that, like when it comes to your content, what
Mhm.
inspired you first to get into book content creation online? How has your journey been, and how kind of have you played into all these things that make you who you are as a content creator?
Um, I mean, it started like most, well, actually, I don't know if that's how most people get started. I think there is now an increasing awareness that you can be a content creator and do that for a living and do it quite successfully in all sorts of niches, including the book niche. But I think that I just kind of I started an Instagram account like in 2018.
Okay.
I'd I'd started university like 6 months prior, and I needed a little bit of a project. I had just had a horrendous breakup, and I was like, oh, well, what am I going to do with all this energy? So I started a book account, of course, as you do. And then that didn't really go anywhere for me. I had, my people, my followers, my community, but then it wasn't until 2022 when I decided I would start the Dante Book Club that I started getting some attention, like thousands of followers. And then a year after that, I started making video essays in a more like serious way. I think it's coming up to I made a video in March 2023 that got some attention, but it wasn't until sort of around this time, October, that I was like, I should probably focus on this and give it the energy that it deserves. Um, and I think the motivation between that was just I love a yap session. I do enjoy talking, in case you haven't noticed. And just I think it's such a great medium. And YouTube being a search engine as well, really, if you put some thought and research into your content and get lucky, of course, but also play the sort of search keyword game, you are likely to get some people's attention, and if you're even luckier, you might even keep it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It started a bit, not as intentional as I would have liked. I feel like my advice for anybody who wants to start would be just to start and continue to make stuff, even if you're not getting huge results, to begin with at least. But it is such an incredible tool for people who have things to say but might not know where to say it, or whose, other type of writing doesn't really get picked up by publications and whatever. Just publish it yourself. You don't need permission. You don't need a gatekeeper to tell you, okay, yeah, this is worth putting out there into the world.
If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookupapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.